Welcome back, Mando.
You could call upon the seas to outclean your enemies.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tagar. Welcome to our what number are we on right now, friends? We are on our 345th Mandalorian episode of Mandovision. I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you so much for checking out our small independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. Hit us up on those socials at Mando_Vision on X and Insta, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and of course, you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we are back, and we are here to kick off Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, the final season of Star Wars Rebels. It's been a whirlwind rewatching this show, and I'll be honest, I think I've gotten a lot out of rewatching this series, just like with the Clone Wars. Though I felt with Clone Wars, I felt more versed going back into it. Like there was more episodes I had a good understanding of. Rebels is very. I don't know why. It was like certain episodes of Rebels stuck in my brain pretty well. But a lot of this has been very informative to go back and rewatch these shows and kind of let my brain marinate in the world of Rebels. So good stuff. And of course, that means we have another show to pick up later this year to go back and revisit. But I think I've mentioned what that is, so you probably know already. So let's not worry about it right now. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and read the particulars for this episode. Though I do want to say, just a little preview, there's some stuff I want to talk about in this two-part episode to open the season. And of course, we're only doing part 1 today. But next week, when we drop part 2, there's some stuff about Mandalore I want to discuss, and I want to have a little bit of a chat with you guys about. Because, well, there's some interesting things happening, and I think it's time for us to have a bit of a conversation about Mandalore. We haven't had like an in-depth convo about Mandalore since I don't know, probably the last season of the Mandalorian, when they actually are on Mandalore as well. So, let's go ahead. Let's get our episode particulars for this one out of the way. Are you ready? This is Star Wars Rebels, Season 4, Episode 1, Heroes of Mandalore, Part 1. Original air date October 16th, 2017. The plot for this week: the rebels attempt to rescue Sabine's father from the clutches of the Empire with the help of Clan Ren. Our primary cast for this week: Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall is Harrison Dula, Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus, Tia Sakar is Sabine Wren, Dave Filoni is Chopper, Carrie Huatagua is Aldrich Wren, the late great R.I.P. sir. Katie Sackhoff returns as Bo-Katan Kryze. Andrew Kashino is Captain Hark. Kevin McKidd returns as Fen Rao. Rajesh Rajan is Tristan Wren. Steve Blum is a bunch of stormtroopers. Matthew Wood is also a stormtrooper. Tobias Menzies as Tiber Saxon. We get a new member of the Saxon clan. Because, again, the Saxons weren't going away just because Gar was killed. And, of course, Sharmila Devar as Ursa Wren. So, very cool to see Tobias Menzies join the cast for the show. I had forgotten that he was a voice actor for this show. But Tobias has done a lot of great movies and shows over the years, so I'm sure it's a name you know and probably a voice you might recognize. So excellent that he's in the cast for this week as Tiber Saxon. Again, a new member of the Saxon clan. Still the enforcers of the Imperial will on Mandalore. And so for the Mandalorian Civil War, those are sort of heads of the Mandalorian Civil War. We got the Saxons basically versus the Wrens. And of course, Clan Kryze is not too far behind. Okay, so this episode directed by Stuart Lee and written by Henry Gilroy, and Stephen Milshin. All right, Bucketheads, let's go ahead. Let's get into the episode. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
So we open our episode. We're out in the wastes of Mandalore, a giant prison complex in the distance. Our heroes, we have Kanan and Ezra and Chopper, along with Sabine and the rest of Clan Ren. And our other heroes are back with the Rebel Alliance. Hera's not there. Zeb is not there. Rex is not there. They're being loaned out, as was discussed at the end of the Season 3 finale, that they want to return the favor of the Mandalorians, Clan Ren specifically coming to the aid of the rebels against Thrawn. So here we are in Mandalore, and we're attempting to rescue the father of Sabine Wren, who's been in prison. He's a bit of a political prisoner. The Empire has him in custody, and we're out at this facility where he is supposedly going to be taken to. Or has been taken to from the capital, moved out of Sundari to this facility out in the middle of nowhere. We learn very quickly. Kanan's a little bit uneasy about this whole situation, and we do discover that it is a trap eventually. But listen, let me just put this out here for this entire episode. This is a very action-packed episode of the show. Not a lot of big story stuff happening. Not a lot of super critical information being relayed in this episode. It is based around the action in this opening scene, fighting the Empire against the Mandalorians fighting the Empire at this prison facility. Big action sequence, good stuff in here. And one of the things I definitely wanted to mention as sort of like a highlight here is Kanan sort of being at the top of his game as far as his Jedi abilities go, because Kanan is doing stuff that we can only do in video games as far as Star Wars go. We've never seen anything quite like this. Not maybe since Anakin back in the Clone Wars. You know, the way he's bouncing around from Stormtrooper on jetpacks to Stormtrooper on jetpacks, and just doing really fantastic Jedi stuff. Kanan's outstanding in this episode. Like I said, his abilities are off the charts. So the Empire has baited a trap. Clan Ren and Sabine have fallen headfirst into it in their effort to rescue her father, and this is a trap, put together by Clan Saxon. Basically, they're not. They know how Clan Ren thinks, and they are not going to lose this Mandalorian civil war, and they intend to hold on to Mandalore as long as they can for the Empire. So again, great stuff in the episode. Really good fighting. As again, Kanan just kind of stealing the show, really. Just destroying Imperial transports and chicken walkers and all the good stuff. Excellent work by him. Coming to the aid towards the end of the battle to help mop up against the Imperial reinforcements, Clan Kryze arrives on the scene. Bo-Katan herself makes her return to the world of Star Wars and the Mandalorian saga, if you will. And we find out, one of the bits and pieces of information we find out is that shortly after the insurrection of Darth Maul, once the Jedi had sort of liberated Mandalore forever, however briefly, Bo-Katan was in charge of Mandalore, and she lost control of Mandalore to Gar Saxon in the Empire because she refused to serve the Emperor. And so that led to her dismissal. So Bo-Katan's arc from Clone Wars to Rebels to The Mandalorian to Ahsoka to all these things, this is all important parts of her journey. Because again, when we saw her last in The Mandalorian, it seemed as though she was ready to try and take on the leadership role once again of Mandalore. And I don't remember how far we got with that. If she actually did sort of become the de facto leader of Mandalore yet again, it sort of felt that way. But I do sort of need to revisit that last season, that most recent season of The Mandalorian, to make sure I'm not speaking too far out of my element here. But but yeah, this is a big part of that arc because again, she feels she's not worthy of the Darksaber because she's failed in that leadership role. So this is a big chunk of Bo-Katan kind of having that doubt that we find her in when Din Djarin meets up with her later on, and when we find her at her little base, her little palace. Those sort of moments start here, and good information to know that Clan Kryze is in fact helping Clan Ren in this Imperial Civil War because of how they feel about the Empire. Now, granted, we don't get too much into Bo-Katan's whole thing with Death Watch. We've all moved on from that, but Bo-Katan's backstory is somewhat fascinating, and I would love for it to be explored in some fashion. I don't know if we'll ever get that because there seems to be not a lot of interest in Star Wars, the Star Wars creatives, whether it's in some comics or book publishing or anything, about giving away backstory for these characters that they may want to do down the road. And I suppose to a certain extent, I understand that and I can respect that because there's nothing more annoying than getting a book or a comic that provides a lot of backstory on a character and then having it be changed later on because of something they want to do in live action instead. So while I do appreciate that situation, I do wish we could get more backstory on some of these characters. I mean, again, it was so much easier in the time of Legends because at the time there was no new Star Wars. So when you were getting backstories on characters like Admiral Akbar or whatever, or Wedge or whoever, like it was cool because you didn't have to worry about something coming along and upsetting that apple cart and until Disney bought it and then threw all that away and decided to reinvent everything. But that is a different argument, my friends. So we find out Bo-Katan was dispatched by Sabine's mom because she had gotten word that Sabine's father was actually being transported back to the capital. And so this was all a trap designed to lure them out. And so that's revealed. But we find out where this convoy is, and now it's on to great big action sequence number 2. A lot of fun stuff in the first action sequence, by the way, like Ezra attempting to use a Mandalorian jetpack. That leads to some humorous stuff. And again, Kanan just being awesome. It's interesting to see Fen Rao in his very distinctive Mandalorian armor. The Mandalorian armor that he is probably more comfortable wearing inside of a cockpit than he is on the ground. But it's interesting to see him doing his thing with that sort of like that gold trim around his blue Beskar. Interesting stuff for sure on that front. But still quite a warrior. One of the elements that I'm hoping, again, I don't remember the show as well as I'd like to, and I don't know if they'll talk more about it in our next installment. But I have a lot of questions about Mandalorian society at this point because when we meet up and see who Sabine's father is, we find a man who's not donning Beskar, a man who is known for art and things of that, of the more civilized side of Mandalorian culture. And that's something we're going to talk a little bit more about next week. I want to kind of put a pin in that, just mention it briefly here. But I think we'll have a little bit more of a discussion about that on our next episode. So now we move to the next big action piece for the episode, which is the pursuit, right? There's a little bit of stuff with our new member of Clan Saxon who wants to end this Mandalorian Civil War, and he is all about being the Empire. He's like wearing Stormtrooper armor, not even wearing like the Imperial Super Commando Mando armor. He's like super Stormtrooper dude. But yeah, he's the bad guy, and we're gonna get to see more of him, I would imagine, next week. So at the very tail end of this sequence, we have Clan Ren arrive, Tristan, Ursa Ren, all together, and it's time to forge a plan, right? So I really like this thing. This is like one of the few quiet scenes in the episode, is when they're getting ready to stage the next plan to rescue Aldrich, and that involves attacking a convoy, right? So Ursa and Tristan are going to cause a diversion. The transport will veer off and head down this canyon where Sabine, Bo-Katan, and everyone can then engage with the transports and rescue Sabine's father. Of interesting note, when Ursa arrives to tell them of the plan, the change of transport plans for Aldrich back to Sundari, she mentions that once he gets there, he's going to be terminated, which I thought was an interesting choice of words. Are they not allowed to say executed? It was very, I don't know. Like I said, I thought it was a strange choice of words, for sure. And then there's also a nice moment where Sabine's looking out at the wasteland of Mandalore, and Ezra mentions to her how different their homeworlds were. And so Sabine sort of tells a story that we all know, that Mandalore was once a beautiful place covered in grass, but continuous war has destroyed the planet and made it into what it is now. And, once again, Sabine tries to get rid of the Darksaber by handing it off to Bo-Katan, but she's sort of saddled with it and can't get rid of it, even though she's been wielding it here in combat and doing things with it. She can't wait to sort of unburden herself from being the wielder of the Darksaber. But again, not finding anyone willing to take it off her hands or challenge her to combat for it, at least not yet. So that's all very, very interesting. Okay, then we shift to the part where they're making the plan. And what I like about this scene is actually what we see in the background, which is Kanan and Chopper off in the distance, behind the planning session. And he's having a holocom transmission with Hera. And because we know what's coming in this season, I think they do a really nice job of sort of like underlining the love and affection that Kanan and Hera have for each other, and they do that really nicely, really subtly in this sequence here, where they're talking about their feelings without talking about their feelings. It sounds like they're talking about Imperial rebel stuff. But there's more to that the couple of lines of dialogue that they share with each other. It's a very, very interesting sequence. And again, we're sort of subtly underlining that these two are in love with each other, and they are, partners in more ways than just the Rebel Alliance. It's a good bit. I like this little bit quite a lot. So check that part out. Then, of course, it is time for the action sequence. Clan Wren's stages the diversion, engages the Imperial dogs, and the troop transport carrying Aldrich Wren veers down the canyon. So things are going in place, and now is our big, giant action sequence, which is a lot of fun. Now, again, Clan Saxon, they want to capture Sabine. They want to take her alive, which, Imperials have said maybe not the best thing. Like, they can't guarantee anything, blah, blah, blah. But why does Clan Saxon want Sabine? What's going on here? And then we get a message. All right, so we have our Mandalorian Super Commando Imperial guy radioing and telling him about the attack and how they are diverted, but they are still on schedule, and blah, blah, blah. And then that's when you get a line about the weapon being readied. And we're like, what does that mean? Well, we're going to put a pin in that, as Tiber Saxon says. He will get the weapon ready. So again, great action sequence here as they are attacking the convoy. Good stuff. I can't recommend it highly enough. Chopper gets in on the act. A lot of good stuff. Watch it. It's a great sequence. It's at the end of the episode, though. Once they have liberated Aldrich Wren, and we find out that he is not the Mandalorian warrior that maybe we were all expecting him to be, that he is something of a, I don't know, I don't want to say like civilian necessarily, but he's a different aspect of Mandalorian society that we really haven't seen much of since Duchess Satine was in charge of the planet, and we saw a more peaceful Mandalorian society living in the bubbled world of Sundari, the capital city. So hopefully we'll get a chance to explore that a little bit more next week, and I definitely want to talk about it more after next week's episode. So, yeah, let's hang on to that thought, all right? The big part of the episode, the big cliffhanger for the episode, is what happens next. Clan Wren still engaged against the Empire. They're on transmission, audio transmission, and you hear a noise A noise that sends chills down Sabine's spine is a noise she is all too familiar with. It is the weapon that she made for the Empire, and it's being used right now against her family. So they go to the site of the battle, and what they find is the remains of Mandalorian armor and nothing else. There's ash and whatever in the sky. Kind of looks like the end of Avengers Endgame. Everything's all ashy around the site where this weapon was used. But there's no sign of the Empire. There's no sign of the weapon. There's just the remains of empty Mandalorian armor. So what is this now? What is this weapon that the Empire and the Mandalorians are using against each other, made by Sabine? Well, we have to figure this is why Tiber Saxon is so desperate to bring Sabine in. He probably needs some help with this machine. Probably needs help with this weapon. So we're going to learn a lot about that in our next episode. I think this is a really strong opening number for the final season of Star Wars Rebels. I mean, we have a lot of ground to cover in this final episode. We've teased a lot of things. So let's get Mandalore going. Let's get this sort of handled to an extent, because we've been building to this for quite some time. But it's not the most amazing episode. It's great action, but we don't drive the story forward necessarily enough. We teased it though. So it's 8 buckets. 8 buckets for this one. Check it out. Again, great action sequences. Kanan at the top of his game as a Jedi. I can't recommend that enough to you. So go watch this one. And I think that's going to be it, Bucketheads. We have wrapped up our kickoff of Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, and I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for always supporting the show. We are now into 2026. Another year of the podcast is going to be under our belts. And I can't thank you guys enough for all your kindness and support over the years. Thank you for being here. Thank you for always being here. I truly, truly appreciate every single person who takes the time to download and stream the show and hit me up about the show and talk to me about it. I love you guys. Thank you so, so much. All right, let's get out of here. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding, tolerant of the craziness that is out there in the Star Wars world. But yeah, go out there and be awesome, all right? We'll be back. Happy 2026. Hope you all had a happy and safe New Year. We'll be back next week to do part 2 of the Heroes of Mandalore. But remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!